Hey everybody! I acquired a Silvertone Espanada in a trade a while back and haven't gotten around to doing anything with it. It's been heavily modded over time, and my goal is to kind of bring it back to its original specs. So let's jump in and take a look. I'll just kind of show you, what's been done to it and then what I plan to do to it. And then I'm gonna bring you guys along for the journey. So I believe that a while back it had a neck reset. The guy that I got it from used a cheap junky automotive paint and left a bunch of just gnarly, nasty, streaky stuff everywhere. Look at all these drip marks, isn't that terrible? He just didn't know what he was doing, didn't really care. So this came with the P13 pickups that Gibson made, and those are pretty rare and hard to find now, and super expensive. They're like 400 bucks a piece or something ridiculous like that. It's basically a P90. I had Tim McNelly build me a custom set of P90 gold foil mustache sweet ash pickups for this guy. Also, there's been some heavy wear to the fretboard in some areas. I'm gonna replace this plastic nut with a bone nut, and I've got these Grover tuners to replace them. This Silvertone logo has broken off on this part, so I'm gonna remove this and probably get a new Silvertone logo for it just to have everything cleaned up. Originally, these had 4 knobs, 2 volume, 2 tone. Those were removed. This is only a volume control, just a single volume. So these pickups, both pickups are always on. They don't sound too bad, but they are like single coil strap pickups, which it just has a weird sound for what I play. This is a super cheap bridge. Little posts are sticking up so they get your hand. So either I'm gonna cut that down or I'm just gonna replace the bridge. Super cheap tailpiece. I may replace it with something a little better, more high quality. This is gonna probably be a personal guitar, so I may put on a Bigsby tailpiece. We'll see. I don't know if this guitar will be able to handle it. I don't want to ruin it. 3-way switch. I'm gonna leave the 3-way knob because originally that was where it is. Why don't you join me for the journey, the rebuild journey, and we can do this together. So let's jump on in. So I just finished sanding everything down on the guitar, and there's a few really interesting things that I've found as I'm sanding it down. So the original color, I knew that they came in black. I knew that was the original color of this Espanada. So obviously we uncovered a lot of that when we were sanding things down. These are the holes that he drilled for the custom little mounts that he had for the pickups. I'm going to re-drill because I'm putting in back in the original mounts. So you can see where those have been filled. Whoever did the filling did a pretty good job actually with the knobs. This is where the old knobs used to be, and they filled them pretty nicely. The work was done pretty well by whoever did that. I'm gonna actually have to go back in and I'm gonna fill back in some of this neck joint with some glue, just to make sure everything is super solid and still really secure. Also, I'm getting a lot of cracking that I noticed in the binding, which I already knew would have to be addressed. But I'm going to also fill this with like a binding glue and make sure that all of the binding is just super solid before we start on everything else. And I don't have a suction cup to push the glue down into the joint or a syringe, unfortunately, but if I did, I would use one of those to push the glue down. But right now I'm just putting it down little bit by little bit and just kind of letting gravity work in my advantage in this case, just to get into those cracks. Alright, so I just finished scraping and sanding everything. I used a razor blade to scrape. I felt like that was way easier than just sanding the binding and the existing wood down. In hindsight, what I should have done is tape everything off with painter's tape and just apply glue in the specific areas where I needed it. Brushing it on was way too much and just unnecessary. So note to self, use painter's tape if you're trying to fix old binding. I could have also just dropped a little bit of acetone in it instead of actually use the binding glue. I wanted to use something that would actually hold. I went ahead and sanded everything down up to 320 grit. I shellacked everything. I just went over it in bullseye shellac just to get an undercoat, you know, a nice solid sealant coat. Technically it's like sanding sealer is what I used it as. It's not really. You can use it as a final coat, but I didn't want to do that. This just protects the wood. Then we're going to go over it with a primer filler combination and also give us a level base for our color coat when we decide what color we want to go with. So I usually shellac underneath all of my finishes for the most part, just to seal the wood. So that way you get no color in the top coat or in the color coat from the wood itself, no oils or anything come through. I'm sure a handful of y'all are about to watch this with me remove the frets from the guitar and be like, whoa, 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 what are you doing? You're supposed to pull them out with nippers. Well, yes, in most cases, but not with these kinds of frets. So with these kinds of frets, and I don't know if you can see because these are so nasty. So these kinds of frets have tang ends that stick out kind of like claws, like that. So if you pull up with these, you're gonna get gnarly chip out. And that's not because they were glued in, that's just not how they're designed to be removed. Normal frets have more subtle fret tangs that don't have those claws sticking out, so they can be pulled in, you know, and pushed down. But with these guys, you have to actually hammer them out, so they have to come out on the side. The only thing you have to watch out for though is just chip out at the ends, the fret ends. Yeah, when they're hammered out, smooth as can be. So make sure when you're taking frets out of an old guitar, such as like a vintage guitar or something, make sure that you know what kind of frets are in there before you just go pulling them. They might need to come out from the side. I didn't have a punch to knock them out with, unfortunately, so I just used a flathead screwdriver and was really careful.